Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today heads India's largest company, the only Indian company to feature on the Fortune 500 list at 191. It has a sales turnover of more than 125,000 crore rupees. I'm delighted to welcome Mr. M.S. Ramachandran, Chairman of the Indian Oil Corporation.
Thank you very much,
Mr. Ramachandran, as we record this, difficult times ahead for you. Dr. Manmohan Singh's wife complains that the price of LPG mustn't go up. You recommended at the end of March an increase of about 95, 94 rupees. You're running huge losses because of the hike in petrol prices. What kind of problems do you confront?
Well, this is something to do with the deregulation process, the model that we have adopted. The model that we have adopted is that we have import parity as a concept for domestic prices, and the prices are reviewed every 15 days. Once you have adopted import parity as a concept, then you have to align yourself with the international prices, and if international prices are volatile, they will definitely affect the domestic prices.
I think the latest report suggests that it's crossed $40 a barrel from $20 not too long ago. So what kind of, and I saw a figure recently that said petrol prices might go up by 4 rupees and diesel by 5. Isn't that sort of sending out alarm bells to the economy and to a government just about taking over?
4 rupees and 5 rupees, I also read the news item, and I'm not saying that they should go up by 4 rupees or 5 rupees. What I am saying is that today 70% of the crude oil is imported, and domestic consumption of petroleum products is going up, and the import dependency is also therefore going up. You cannot but align your prices with the international prices, and if international prices, as you say, have crossed $41, there is definitely a need to look at domestic prices, and if we have to cushion the consumers against such volatility, then we have to look at various other models for providing that kind of sort of a safety net. Otherwise, I think we have very little choice.
So what are some of these other models other than subsidies? And in the recent interim budget, the subsidies were reduced. So in a sense, you're more exposed to potential losses.
Well, subsidies are still there for kerosene and LPG. Now, the other models are that when the international prices of crude oil, they go up, and corresponding the product prices also go up. Now, our duty structure, the tax structure, is something that we can look at. Now, all the taxes, whether it is custom duty, excise duty or sales tax, which is levied by state governments, they are all ad valorem taxes. Now, some of the finance ministry at the center, the state governments, they all are the beneficiaries of this increase in the international prices, because the government take by way of ad valorem duties and taxes also goes up.
So explain to us in layperson's terms, on a litre of petrol, how much tax, say in Delhi the price is around 33, 34 rupees, how much tax is going?
Almost 50% or more is duties and taxes.
And on LPG?
On LPG there is a very big subsidy, as you know. LPG is not taxed so much. So LPG, it's I think the custom duty on LPG is about 10%, and that is almost equal to the crude duty on crude oil. So the markup is depending on the state governments, varying sales tax rates are there, but I would imagine it won't be all put together, won't be less than 20%. But items like petrol and also diesel, in certain states the sales tax on diesel oil is more than 30%. So the model that I was trying to put across is that at the beginning of the year, we say that this is the amount that we expect from the petroleum sector. And I believe the duty structure is tailored in such a fashion based on certain estimated crude and product prices as to what the yield will be in terms of ad valorem taxes. But if the international prices rise very much higher, now these are by way of taxes and duties, the government mops up much more money. So I think there is a case therefore to follow a model, perhaps Malaysia follows this model. Automatically the duty structure is adjusted. So let us say that there is a base level of price that we expect. Now beyond that, if the price goes up, then the percentage of duty or tax is reduced, and vice versa. If the crude oil price drops to $20 or lower, then you can hike the tax rate, so that the inflow into the government treasury is kept intact. But today what is happening is, because of the runaway increase in prices, the collection through taxes and duties is also very much higher. Now, so it is possible to have some kind of a stabilization mechanism, if I may put it that way.
You've recommended us creating a stabilization fund. What would that involve?
So one is this automatic adjustment mechanism. Another is that you do not adjust the price every 15 days. You have price revision, say every 3 months, and then the pluses and minuses are adjusted. Of course, the center has to step in if prices continue to remain high, and let us say that the oil companies have not been able to increase the prices. But by the same token, they continue to get more taxes and duties. And there is also a need, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rajesh, there is also a need to rationalize the sales tax structure across the states, because it varies from state to state. Some places it is as low as 4%, and some places, as I say, is about 30%. Most state governments look at petroleum products to bridge their revenue deficit, which is unfortunately the case.
So how sympathetic are you going to be to the new government and Dr. Manmohan Singh on this issue if there is going to be inevitably pressure on you not to increase prices or not to increase them significantly? You've suggested a model. How sensitive or receptive do you think the government is going to be able to be to something like this? I mean, either you reduce revenues and risk that, revenues from taxes, in the model that you suggest, where you're not able to maximize that, or you risk all sort of the chain down reaction of not just the increase in oil prices, but generalized inflation. How do you handle these kinds of pressures?
Well, I think we need to have a very serious discussion on this subject. Because most people believed when deregulation was announced, the oil prices will go down. But the fact is, if you really look at the valuation of the finished product, about roughly 90% is the cost of crude oil, and 70%, as I said, is imported. And we have to pay international prices even for domestic crude oil. Is only fair. So there is very little that you can do except to reduce the margins, and margins are frozen now at April 2002 levels. Our marketing margins are much lower than the marketing margins internationally. So I think, to my mind, the only way in which you can cap these prices is to have a rational duty structure. And you see, we had an oil pool mechanism in the past, which used to sort of cushion the customers against such volatility. And of course, we also had oil pools, the so-called oil pool deficit, the ballooning deficit. At some stage, the government had to step in and give us bonds. So what I am saying is that some of the increase necessarily has to be passed on to the customer. Now, the intrinsic cost has to be paid. I mean, otherwise there is a possibility that there will be misuse. If you remember, Dr. Kelkar used to talk about dieselization of the economy. Diesel prices were kept very low, and people were running captive generators, were not using grid power. So such aberrations were taking place. We have to pay the true cost of the product. Having said that, the customer can get relief by way of lower duties and taxes when the international prices are high. I believe the government, I think, is conscious of this. And I think there will be some kind of a discussion on this subject, because you can't keep the prices down for too long without hurting the oil companies.
You're watching a conversation with Mr. M.S. Ramachandran, Chairman of the Indian Oil Corporation. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away.
कोई कोई तन्हाई से अच्छा है घर आजा इस दर से अपना दर अच्छा है घर आजा
9.5 BHP 90 kilometers per litre. Bajaj Caliber 115. Now at rupees 37,990. Hori Baba.
Shri Ultra Red Oxide, Sun Rodhak Cement.
Corporation Bank. One bank, many solutions.
मेरा नाम हरी सिंह मेहंदी रत्ता है जी।
मेहंदी रत्ता परिवार के रगों में खून नहीं, डीजल दौड़ता है।
हमारे यहाँ तो बीपी चलता है। एवरेज में फर्क आता है जी, एवरेज अच्छा देती है गाड़ी। अगर 20 लीटर भी हमें एक चक्कर में बच जाती है तो 4 गाड़ियाँ तो लाख सवा लाख तो आराम से बच जाता है।
सालों तक प्यार भरी देखभाल के लिए फिलिप्स का इस्तेमाल करें। फिलिप्स बल्ब जो ज्यादा चले चलता रहे।
Ramnath Goenka, patriot, leader, visionary, a man with the courage to stand up for the truth, founder of an institution called the Indian Express Group. On his birth centenary, we rededicate ourselves to his legacy, journalism of courage.
The Sangam lifestyle.
Sangam is life, Sangam is style.
Life full of style. Sangam suitings.
Sí, muy romántica.
Maxima, घड़ियां इतनी सही कि वक्त भी उनका पाबंद है। Maxima, perfect timing.
Welcome back. You know, there's this talk that we might be headed for 1973 kind of meltdown and global oil crisis. And there's already been an impact on the US stock market and the global economy with prices crossing $40 a barrel. How serious do you think that threat or that possibility is, and how bad might it get for us?
1973, of course, was the famous Yom Kippur War. There was oil embargo and things like that. Today, there is no embargo. Oil is available, but at a price. Definitely, a continued increase in oil prices or oil prices staying at this level will definitely have a negative impact on the economy, because all said and done, petroleum products are a key input for any economy. And in particular in our country, the per capita consumption of petroleum products is little over 100 kg, whereas the world average is about 1000 kg, and United States is maybe 4000 plus. And as a developing economy, we need energy, and in the foreseeable future, petroleum products, hydrocarbons will continue to play a major role as a key input for this energy.
What is your prediction? How high might the prices go? You know, it's increased summer consumption and demand in the United States and much of Europe with summer traffic, it's reported. The war in the Middle East, it's a delicate, difficult situation. How bad do you think it might get?
I think probably it's my personal opinion, the oil prices probably have reached their highest point, and I do not think there is any reason to believe that they should go up any higher. But at the same time, if they remain at this level, they can cause a lot of harm. There is a lot of pressure on the OPEC countries to hike the outputs, and but the way I see it, not much of leeway is available, and some time will be required to ramp up production, except in, as I said, I've been saying this, places like Saudi Arabia you can ramp up very quickly. So I think even if they remain, they may not go higher, but even if they remain at the current levels, it's going to be a problem, and a solution to the Iraq crisis will probably help to pump more oil into the market, but that seems to be far away.
How relieved are you that there is a new government that will not be putting as much pressure on disinvestment? Do you philosophically, you've been working with Indian Oil Corporation since 1969, you've been part of a public sector undertaking. Do you have faith in the public sector? Do you believe in the common perception that anything privatized becomes more efficient and more productive?
I certainly believe in the private sector. A lot of people today accept the fact that the managements of the public sector are not inferior, and in many cases it has been proved that the managers are as good or better than the people in the private sector. Now, what is really required is some kind of a operational autonomy and an arm's length relationship between the government and the public sector companies. And today morning I read the newspaper where the Dr. Manmohan Singh has already said that that is probably his philosophy, that public sector units, I mean, there will be no talk of disinvestment for the sake of disinvestment. That will be very selective, and greater autonomy will be given to public sector units. Now, you have seen the performance of the oil sector. Most of it is now in the ambit of public sector, the PSUs. Now, if they can do so well, and I think with increased autonomy and greater freedom, I have no doubt at all that these will be shining examples of the public sector industry.
The Chief Vigilance Commissioner reported to Mr. Vajpayee that there was undue interference from ministers into public sector undertakings. What has been your experience in the recent past?
Fortunately, I mean, in Indian Oil we haven't had that kind of an experience, and I must say that very clearly. We haven't had that kind of interference. Now, of course, as a government company, I mean, we have to differentiate interference from having to follow the certain policies of the government. And really speaking, there is no level playing ground in certain respects, that we have to follow the government policies in respect of many things, recruitments, promotions, dealerships, etc. But the private sector, they do not have these problems. You know, there are income limitations. So we are supposed to be instrument of executing the state policy, whereas that is not there, and they have a lot more freedom. But otherwise, in terms of interference as such, we haven't had to face that problem.
In a larger context, how do you view Dr. Manmohan Singh's statements and policies and approach to disinvestment? I mean, he's compared the previous government's policies and disinvestment as giving away the family silver, and he has a much more, well, shall we say, balanced approach, a restrained effort, a restrained attention to the problems of disinvestment. What are your views?
I mean, these are two governments. I have worked for the earlier government, and I continue to work for the new government. So, I do not see sort of a very major difference as such. Now, both the governments, I think, agreed that PSUs in the strategic sector, now how you define the strategic sector is something else, should not be disinvested. And Dr. Manmohan Singh says that he is not against privatization or disinvestment per se, but only it will be done on a selective basis. So ultimately, I think when we look at individual companies taken up, and that is the time I think probably we can have a better idea as to how this government is going to handle this disinvestment process. But I don't think we welcome the statement made by the Dr. Manmohan Singh. And as far as Indian Oil is concerned, Indian Oil is not a candidate for disinvestment, I hope.
Tell me that Indian Oil Corporation is the only company in the Fortune 500 list. It's that way by virtue of its size, but also the sort of the leadership and innovation that you have provided to the company. What are some of the major initiatives that you feel proud of that Indian Oil has taken? You know, sort of diversifying internationally, looking to buy oil exploration companies. What is the single most gratifying initiative for you?
I think the single most gratifying initiative, if you want to put it that way, is to, once we got a deregulation process going, we could gear up the machinery within the company to make it work like a business undertaking, as good as, I mean, subject to government policies, we work like a private sector company. We want to maximize returns to our stakeholders. In this case, it's the government of India. And the culture within the company is one of productivity improvement all the time, a quest for excellence, as we put it internally. We have done quite a few things. We have made a vision statement for ourselves, and we want to integrate across the hydrocarbon value chain. And as you said earlier, we have been quite successful at it. We have been to upstream, and more significantly, we have gone to downstream petrochemicals in a very big way to gas. So today we are in the process of becoming a truly vertically integrated company with global presence. The vision statement says that we want to become a transnational energy major, not merely being in hydrocarbons, but being in energy and also being transnational. And I think we have had some degree of success, having been to Sri Lanka, having established a company in Mauritius, and exporting petroleum products to a number of companies, a number of countries, including Sri Lanka. And lubricants are now going to at least about 15 to 20 countries. And just recently we had a breakthrough. We signed a term contract with our neighbor, Bangladesh Petroleum Company. We are now talking to Pakistan. Very gratifying that the vision that we set out to achieve, we are in the process of realizing it.
You're watching a conversation with Mr. Ramachandran, Chairman of the Indian Oil Corporation. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away.
श्री अल्ट्रा रेड ऑक्साइड संगरोधक सीमेंट।
क्योंकि रिलैक्सो का जमाना है, रिलैक्सो क्योंकि स्टाइल भी जताना है, क्योंकि बारिश में भीग जाना है।
आराम, स्टाइल और ढेर सारा प्यार, रिलैक्सो परिवार।
रिलैक्सो का ही जमाना है। रिलैक्सो पहनो तो जानो।
The Sangam lifestyle. Sangam suitings.
From Coop Junior account to education loans. Corporation Bank. One bank, many solutions.
जिम जिंदो सिरप बदहजमी हटाए, पाचन कराए। क्या करें, सब खाने पीने का ही तो चक्कर है।
सुबह के 8:30 बजे हैं और अब सुनिए छाया गीत।
जो करे टाइम की कदर, दुनिया करे उसकी कदर। जो करे टाइम की कदर, दुनिया करे उसकी कदर।
नया यामाहा क्रक्स, माइलेज और मजबूती का पक्का, जो बनाए आपको टाइम का पक्का।
जो करे टाइम की कदर,
दुनिया करे उसकी कदर।
सफर जिंदगी का महका महका, यहाँ कल क्या हो किसने जाना। कोई गम आए या मुश्किलें, कभी नहीं घबराना। कल जिंदगी क्या है किसने जाना।
आपके मेडिकल खर्चों का एक सही समाधान, नेशनल्स मेडिक्लेम पॉलिसी।
पूरा यकीन है खुद में जब हम आए क्लोज।
नया सिंथोल डियो सोप, इसमें है लॉन्ग लास्टिंग डियो फॉर्मूला जो रखे आपको फ्रेश और कॉन्फिडेंट पूरा दिन। नया सिंथोल डियो सोप, गेट रेडी, गेट क्लोज।
कोडाक KB10 कैमरा अब 499 रुपए के आकर्षक दाम में, साथ ही एक कोडाक मैक्स फुल मुफ्त। आज ही खरीदिए। कोडाक KB10 कैमरा अब 499 रुपए के आकर्षक दाम में, साथ ही एक कोडाक मैक्स फुल मुफ्त। आज ही खरीदिए।
Welcome back as we continue our conversation with the Chairman of the Indian Oil Corporation, and let's look at the man behind the office. Mr. Ramachandran, you started as a management trainee and you've had a long, illustrious innings moving up the ranks to heading this organization. You're a mechanical engineer by training. You're now sort of principally an administrator. How has that process of growing within a single company been for you? It's very unusual in contemporary times.
Well, Indian Oil is my second company. After graduation, I worked for Ashok Leyland Limited before I joined Indian Oil Corporation. Now, as you know, all the oil companies were public sector companies, and it is only now the private sector has opened up. So naturally one grew within the same company. Fortunately, the growth of Indian Oil has been very, very good. The Indian petroleum industry itself grew very rapidly. The growth in the consumption of petroleum products vis-a-vis GDP, the ratio was almost 1.1. If GDP was say 6%, consumption was almost 7%. And so Indian Oil and the rest of the industry, we grew quite well.
In what way did the growth of the company parallel your own personal evolution? It's 35 years. That's a long time. What has been the gratification of working with Indian Oil? Surely the private sector would have given you more money, more autonomy. What are the kind of satisfactions you derive from your job?
More money, maybe yes, but not more autonomy. And one of the advantages of working for Indian Oil is the kind of autonomy that we give to our managers. Along with the growth, I mean, one's own career also advanced. And the most satisfying thing is that working for a company like IOC, which was a growing company, I had the opportunity to work in many assignments which people would love to handle. Started a career in marketing division, and having worked in marketing division, and I worked in the eastern region, in the western region, in the northern area, and I being from the south, I think I now understand truly the ethos of Indian Oil people. And that apart, I had an opportunity, I had a stint in the corporate office handling the international trade division, and also the earlier Oil Coordination Committee. It was a de facto regulatory agency. So that gave me experience across various sectors.
You're obviously a man interested in the spiritual. There was an item in the papers of you meeting with Mata Amritanandmayi. You have been and visited with the Sai Baba. You wear a ring that he gave you. How do you reconcile the spiritual with the commercial or the commerce of enterprise?
I think the spirituality that actually gives me, I mean, that is an anchor on which I lean on to govern the affairs of the company. I think leave alone as a CEO, as any manager, I think should have, and I think if he has spirituality in his get-up or in his mental makeup, I think that will sort of act as a shield to insulate him from the pressures of the office.
How would you describe a life well lived for someone in the, say, in the corporate sector, in your case?
Very difficult question.
That you ran a company successfully, that you were able to be a good human being, that you didn't compromise, that you were able to impact the lives of so many people that you employ. What are some of the elements that would make for you a feeling of satisfaction?
No, the satisfaction within the company is to give back to the company. I mean, a lot of us, a lot of IOC people will freely acknowledge the fact that what they are today is due to the company. It is a very benevolent company. The welfare package of this company is very good. I don't know how many of the people know that our medical facilities probably are the best in the country. If you look at public and private sector put together, they are excellent. So having grown up in this kind of environment, the satisfaction is adding value to the company, leaving the company much stronger than the time, I mean, by virtue of the value that you have added to face the competition. And I believe over a period of time, I have been able to give my bit along with my other IOC colleagues to make IOC what it is.
What happens after you retire? What aspirations and dreams do you have for yourself when you're outside the IOC family? You've been here for a long time.
At the moment, really, I don't have an answer to your question, Rajiv, but I can say this much, that any activity where I can be of some service to the society, because I've had a full career, I would like to do that. This does not mean that I would not like to enter into gainful pursuits, but a portion of my time I would certainly like to earmark for such activities for the welfare of the society.
Mr. Ramachandran, thank you very much. This has been a great privilege.
Thank you very much.